My name is Brenda McGarvey. I am conducting this interview on behalf of Unity Hospice. Today we are interviewing Alphonso Wells. Today is April 28, 2017. This interview is being conducted in Chicago, Illinois. The purpose of this interview is to record the veteran history experience of Alphonso Wells for the Veteran History Project. Mr. Wells, would you mind giving me your full name?
Alphonso Wells.
And what was your date of birth?
March the 29th, 1933.
And what was your branch of service?
Army.
And what was the highest rank you attained?
PFC.
And what war or conflict did you serve in?
During the Korean conflict.
All right, so we're going to back up, if that sounds okay, a little bit. So, did you say you were born in Chicago, Illinois?
Yes.
And what were your parents' names?
Edna Wells and Alfonso Swanson.
And did either one of them serve in the military?
No.
All right. And what were their occupations?
Housewife, and then their father was a Pullman porter.
And did you have any brothers or sisters?
I have a brother.
What's his name?
Vernon S. Wells.
And did he serve in the military?
Yes, he did.
What branch of service did he serve in?
He was in the Army.
And were you drafted or did you enlist?
No, I was drafted.
Drafted in the Army?
In the Army. My brother enlisted.
Do you remember the day you got that draft notice?
The letter came, it was sometime in the early part of April 1953, and it was a letter from the draft board that had stated that my friends and neighbors had selected me.
Wasn't that kind of them?
Yeah, so then I had got my draft notice, and I was to report to the draft board on April the 21st.
Was the Korean War going on at that time?
Yes, it was.
That must have been a bit of a scary experience.
It was.
Sure your mother was not happy to see that notice come in the mail.
I don't think so.
How old were you at that time?
20.
20? So you were out of high school?
And I was out of high school and I was going to junior college.
So they pulled you out of college to...
In a way.
Yeah. do you remember the day that you left for boot camp? Or basic training? Is it basic training in the Army?
Basic training.
Do you remember that day?
Yes.
What do you remember about that day?
Well, when I went to the draft board, and then it was a whole bunch of people. And what they did, they took us to Fort Sheridan, and we stayed there processing for about 5 days. And they put us on, it was 8 Greyhound buses, and we left for Camp Breckenridge, which is in Kentucky.
Is that where your basic training was?
Basic training was, right.
So when you pulled into Camp Breckenridge, let me see if I have this right. Your instructor, your TI or technical instructor, the instructor of basic training, he showed up with a big cake and a smile on his face and said, "Welcome."
Well, not exactly.
Not exactly like that, huh?
No.
What was the experience?
They lined us up and called your name, and certain people went to certain companies. And it was a friend of mine that we had got drafted together, and we went to the same company.
That was very nice.
Well, yeah.
It makes you feel a little bit more secure, doesn't it?
Well, it was several people in my company that I knew, you know, from back home, as I would say, because we were in Kentucky then.
Do you remember the first days there? Was it a little bit confusing, a little bit scary, a little bit exciting? Or?
Well, it was in April, you know, and it was getting ready to get warm, And after we were all assigned to different companies, and then when we got there, you was assigned to your barracks. And after that, we was issued your uniforms, and then about another day or so, then we began the basic training.
Was it hard adjusting to life? You're out of high school, you're 20 years old, you're on your own, you wake up when you want to, you go to sleep when you want to, you eat what you want to and when. To now being in an environment where they tell you, you're in the Army now and we're telling you when to get up and when to go to sleep. Was that a hard adjustment?
No.
How long were you in basic training?
16 weeks.
That's a long basic training, isn't it?
Right. We were all, at that time, we were all trained as infantry.
So you had a lot to learn as an infantryman.
Right.
What were your when I was in basic training, we had air conditioned buildings.
And we didn't have it.
So I'm sure it was a little different then.
No.
Can you describe the living quarters that you lived in at basic training?
Barracks.
So they were barracks and not
wooden barracks.
Wooden barracks, not air conditioned.
No.
Bunk beds in there.
We had the bunk beds, but we didn't have any air conditioning. On the air conditioning, you got to raise the windows.
And your drawers were probably like what's a Foot Locker, those boxes at the end of your bed. Is that where you kept?
End of the bed, and then your locker was, behind the bed.
Do you have any memories from basic training at all that you can remember?
That training that we did, we had to go out and practice on the firing range, and you learn to shoot different weapons like a 57 recoilless rifle at that time. And at that time, we trained with the M1 Garand.
Okay.
And you learn to how to take it apart and put it together. And we had the light 30 caliber machine guns and the 30 caliber water cooled. And the bazookas, you trained on those. And
Did you do a lot of hiking and obstacle course?
Oh yeah, map reading, all these things that we learned, and going out doing different classes you had and stuff like that.
Did you enjoy the skills you were learning? Were those new skills?
I did.
And did you make it's kind of a funny thing when you're in the military. You usually when you move nowadays, you move with the same people or people. And usually in the military, although you knew some people that you moved with, a lot of times it's a lot of people coming together that don't have family around. And quite often it's one of the reasons people say they get very close and very tight with the people they're in the military with. Did you make any friends during boot camp at all, beyond who you had, or were there people that you remember fondly?
Well, I made friends because there was quite a few from Chicago.
So you guys were.
I got to know them in the area that they lived in. I either had passed through there or I knew some people that went to different high schools that I knew people in.
So you're coming from a big city like Chicago. There is a lot that come together, isn't there? And
yeah.
There's a lot you guys had in common with each other.
Right.
So you're in boot camp or basic training, and at some point you probably received information on what your job was going to be. I know they were training everybody for the infantry.
Well, at that time, everybody was trained then to be a rifleman.
So, and was there a specialty beyond riflemen, or was it just riflemen?
No.
So you went in
the
basic
war was still
training.
Going on then.
That's what they needed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you went in basic training and were training, and Was your specialty school in Kentucky as well?
No.
Where did they send you to for your specialty school?
I went to Camp Pickett, and that was in Virginia.
And what was your specialty?
I was a small arms repairman that I started off as, and then I was shipped to a ordnance company, and I don't know what the MOS was at that time, but
What was how long was your training at those schools?
I really don't know. It
Many
was
weeks
just something
long.
that they put you in and you learn.
God, I understand that. So
We didn't. You didn't go to a school.
I gotcha.
You know, like
You're out there in the field learning.
Right.
Now, at some point then, after your training is done, you got your first assignment. Was your first assignment Korea, or did you go somewhere before Korea?
No,
Right to Korea.
I didn't go.
Where was your first assignment?
Camp Pickett.
Camp Pickett. So did you
After
stay?
basic training.
Did you stay at Camp Pickett for your whole time?
No, we went on maneuvers, and after that the whole company was transferred to Fort Meade in Maryland.
Maryland.
Hmm.
And what was Maryland like?
Oh, that was nice. That was nice.
It was
The camp was situated where it's like 16 miles to the east was Baltimore, Maryland, and 21 miles to the west was Washington, D.C.
oh, that must have been beautiful.
And then you had 100 miles for Philadelphia and all those places up east.
So you were assigned to the 475th Ordnance
Depot
Company.
Right.
And you were there from April 21st of 1953 to April 20th of 1955? No?
Mm-mm.
What was your service dates?
Up there it was
So for you went in the military April 21st, right?
Right.
And then to you got out of the military April 20th of 1955.
right.
And then your entire time, that 2 years, was at Fort George Meade in Maryland, right?
Yeah, just about.
Great. So you did not have to go over to Korea.
No, I didn't at the time.
But
The Korean War ended
so that's why
by the time we finished basic training.
boy, that was good timing.
It was.
For that, because I know Korea was a really, really rough war.
Mm-hmm.
And so then in Maryland, a lot of what you're doing then is support then and preparation.
It was more or less like a
Preparation.
support company.
And preparation in case something else comes on.
Yeah.
Very, very good. So tell me a little bit about Maryland, your experiences in Maryland.
It was pretty nice when we was more or less attached to the 3rd Cavalry. And when they would go on maneuvers, we would have to go on maneuvers with them. And we were always in the rear. And we had the parts that they needed for the tanks and the jeeps and stuff like that. And it was more or less like what would you call it, like a parts shop. And we had all that was in tractor trailers. And you had, and then they would, whenever they needed a part, which was a lot of paperwork, maybe like 3 copies of this, then just to get a set of spark plugs, a headlight, and then we had other people to put in tank engines and Jeep engines, and the tank treads were, that went on tanks and stuff like that. And it was a good experience.
It's a good time to be in the military. I was the same way after the Vietnam War and before any other war. And you were there at the very end of Korean War, but before the Vietnam War. So a lot of what it sounds like you're doing is making sure you're staying in preparation, because at any time you can be called up to the next war. Did you have a chance to connect with family members by phone or letters?
Letters.
Letters?
Mm-hmm.
And did you enjoy getting letters from home? And
I did for a while, and then what had happened was I got so comfortable, I didn't write it home anymore. I didn't miss anybody.
You were making new friends there.
Yes. And then the Red Cross came and got me and told me that I had been writing home, so they wanted me to make a phone call, and I just told them I didn't miss anybody.
Mother Red Cross.
I had got comfortable. So
you got that one, yeah. But when Mother Red Cross steps in, yeah, you got to start.
Right, you got to let them know that you're doing okay.
But isn't it kind of nice to know that in the military that they care about the family as much as they care about you, because they had concerns. They wanted to know that your family knew that you were safe.
Well, family wanted to know how I was doing because they hadn't heard from me. So they.
But I said, I'm a young man. I'm in the military. I'm making money, and I'm up in Maryland.
Well, back then, I guess the pay was in line with the times. Because I think when we went in, we were getting something like $80 a month.
It's not $1 million, that's for sure.
No.
What about some of your experiences when you were there? Do you have any memories of maybe things that you were able to do?
Oh, we went on maneuvers to it was in North Carolina, and they had companies from everywhere that were down there. And I remember going up to I can't even think of the name of the little town in North Carolina. But we slept in squat tents then out there.
A little bit better than the barracks, right?
No,
not much, huh?
No, it was I think 12 people to a squat tent, and then we were way out in the woods. In order to take showers, you had to get on the truck and you had to go to a certain destination, And then people from all over were there doing the same thing, So you had to, if you wanted to take a shower, they would let you go maybe every couple of days or something like that.
You said you were in the military when the Korean War ended. Is that right? You just finished.
Yeah.
Do you remember how that felt when they announced that the Korean War ended?
Well, naturally we were happy.
Yes.
That we didn't have to go. They were saying. Well, if we do go over there, all we're going over there to do is pick up the brass. Because
bring them home, huh?
We had some people that had been over there, and the cadre, they called them, and they were training us. And you know how they give you little tales about what's going on over there, and
scare you,
kind of shook up.
Yeah, it reminds you how serious the...
Yeah, and then they was telling us about the North Koreans, and they said, well, the Chinese they said, this is what they told us. They were helping the North Koreans because the North Korea was backed up against China. Mm-hmm. And then the South Korea was against the sea.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. So there wasn't...
So, then they would say they would be over there and they would be smoking their little funny cigarettes, and they would blow bugles all night long to keep you awake.
So that you'd have the experience of what
And then when they stopped is when it was time for you to worry.
because they were in action at that point.
Here they come.
The Chinese are pretty tough to fight against, I understand
Yeah,
as well.
Then too, you can't tell who's who. All you gotta do is change the uniform,
Yep.
and you wouldn't know who's who.
It's a scary experience when you're going in there and you don't know who you're fighting against.
That's true.
And there was a lot of lives lost during that war. What was a typical day for you like? Like you get up in the morning and then, when you were at your active duty station, what was a typical day like?
You get up and you go to your job assignment and do what you have to do when they bring you the paperwork and they need stuff,
So do what you have to do. What kind of things would you do, typically?
It was mostly like, I would say kind of like clerical.
Gotcha.
Because, we already in the truck and you got all your supplies and they bring you paperwork, and they, looking for different parts and you have to find this, and once you find it, you fill out the paperwork and give it to one paper goes somebody else, you keep one and they keep one and you give them the parts, and that was about the size of it.
Did you spend a lot of time training, learning, practicing your skills and improving skills like shooting and?
No, not after basic training, and when you was assigned to the other company, you didn't go to no rifle range.
You were qualified at that point.
Uh-huh.
What did you guys do when you were off work? Were there things that you would
You went to town, wherever.
enjoy? Just had a good time with your buddies and you played cards and
Oh yeah.
a lot of card playing in there.
And they took some of us, and we went to. This is when I was still stationed in Fort Meade, Maryland, and they took us to Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland.
Okay.
And that's where they do a lot of testing of different weapons and things. And they took us up there to open up a post ordnance up there. And that's what we did. We went up there and set that up for them, a post ordinance. And we were, now that, I kind of like that because that when you went to chow, you had tables. It was like 4 people to a table instead of the long table that you would do in the mess hall. And then I didn't have to do no KP.
So you had to do KP at the other base, though, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in Maryland and you're close to Washington D.C., did you ever get to go visit?
Yeah, I went
Capitol?
once or twice.
Did you enjoy
And it
that?
was a guy in the outfit, and that's where he was from.
So he could show you around.
Right.
So that must have been an enjoyable experience too.
It was, but I didn't, get to go and as a sightseeing, on a tour.
If you close your eyes and think back to that time, is there one particular memory that jumps out at you? It's like one day that you're like, oh, I remember that. Is there anything that jumps out at you more than anything else if you think back on that day?
Uh-huh.
Do you mind sharing it with us?
That was when my time was up.
Okay, so let's get to that. Do you remember? So how did you find out your time was up?
I was counting the days.
So you knew that you were in for 2 years.
Yeah, when I was due to get out, I was in there for like 2 years.
And you're excited about that, huh?
Oh yeah.
Well, let me ask you before we leave there, was there any friends in particular that you made that you remember to this day?
Yeah, I remember one guy. He lived in Philadelphia, and I went home with him one weekend. And I can remember where he lived at. Right around the corner from him was a stadium. I can't remember the name of the stadium, but I kind of remember how we got there because we drove, and I had a nice weekend. And he also had a brother that was in the military, and I think his brother used to come home quite often because he was stationed at Fort Dix, in New Jersey, and then that was
It
closer.
was close to home.
That was close to home.
Did you have the chance to keep in touch with any of the people that you'd met in the military once you got out?
One guy that I knew, he lived in Morgan Park.
Do you remember his name?
His name was Robert E. Thomas, and I saw him even after I got out the service, right? And he had been in there before me, and I met him when after I finished basic training, and they gave me my little 7 days at home before I went to my new assignment, and that's how I met him.
So how long were you able to keep in touch with him after you got out?
For quite a while.
It's hard, it's a different world today than back then, because now we have the internet and we can search for people, but back then when you got out, it was hard to keep in touch, so it was good that you were able to keep in touch
I
with him.
happened to see him because, no, it was two guys. One was from somewhere in Michigan, I think Detroit. And then he moved here. I ran up on him. Right, and after he got out, he got out before me too, and excuse me, I met him when I was working, because at that time, then after I got out, I got to get a job as the mailman, that's how I ran up on both of them.
How long did you work in the Postal Service?
31 years.
So most of your career was with the Postal Service, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, let me ask this. So then you got married and had children, is that right? Afterwards, you got married and had children afterwards, and you have 2 daughters, is that right?
3.
3 daughters. What are their names?
That was Alphanette, Antoinette, and Tanya.
How about? Do you remember when you pulled it back home? When you actually arrived back home from the military? Do you remember that day at all, or what that felt like?
No, I remember, because at the time I had saved up a little money and I bought me a little piece of car. So I drove from...
you pulled up with the car.
I drove from Maryland, Fort Meade, Maryland, to here, back to Chicago.
Do you remember, was your family here when you pulled out? Do you remember them greeting you?
They didn't know I was coming.
Oh, you surprised them? What was that experience like?
Oh, it was, by the time I got back here, let me see, it was at, I'm trying to think, was it at night or was it in daytime? I can't remember that part, but anyway, I do know when I got home, my mother was surprised.
Very happy.
Yeah.
Considering you didn't write unless American Red Cross showed up, right?
Well, after that, the easiest way to do it was to call home.
That must have been a
and
good
chat for a little while.
That must have been a good memory when you walked through the door and your mom saw you there. She must have been. Did you give her a ride in your new car?
It wasn't new.
Oh.
It was a stick shift. Plus it was what was it? It was a Mercury.
A Mercury.
Mm-hmm.
The family and friends very excited to have you home, I'm sure.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Did it feel good to be back home again?
Yes, to me it was.
Back in your own bed, Mama's cooking again.
Yeah.
Adjusting back into civilian life from being in the military, was that a hard adjustment at all for you?
No. Because some of the guys that I got drafted with, I reconnected with them. So they all got out, we all got out at the same time, but they were different places because I think a few of them went overseas at the time.
But sometimes people have a hard time transitioning from the military to civilian life, But you went right into working for the post office, so you had a
Well, when I was in high school, during Christmas time, I used to work there for maybe a month.
so you had that connection
So-
there as well. And military service gives you extra points to be able to, as a preference, to be hired
Yeah,
there.
right.
So it had to be a little bit easier because you're working for the government still, and you're still working for a purpose that's bigger than a lot of times civilian jobs. It can be a hard time for people because it's about a company working for itself. In the military, you learn about how to work together as a unit for the good of the
Well,
whole.
I was used to working there.
Because you've been
Because
there before.
like I said, around Christmas time comes, and when you were out of school, I was even in high school, I would go down there and work for maybe during the Christmas season for a month or so.
So and you spent your career doing that.
Well,
That's very good. It's hard these days to stay in one place. It's wonderful to be able to work in a good, organization for that many years.
see, that was like during the Christmas time.
Oh,
Okay,
That's
in the
hard.
summertime, when school let out, then I had a friend who got me a job at steel mill.
gotcha.
So
So you got to work in the steel mill.
I got to work in there. They put me in the labor gang, and
And-
I would work there for like when you got out in June and then you went back to school and then September.
And that was during your high school years, right?
Right.
So after the military, though, you went full time with the postal
Right.
service and stayed
Right.
there for your rest of your career.
Right. Well, I retired in when was it? 1989.
And are you a member of any veterans organizations?
I'm a member of American Legion Post.
And-
George L. Giles, post number 87.
How about being in the military? Did those experiences affect your life at all?
Not really.
So did you experience things different because you lived in Chicago your whole life, and now the military puts you into different situations? Did you find that there were different situations you weren't used to being there? I think in the notes I looked at, you talked about racism in Virginia,
Right.
and you refused service at restaurants. You never experienced that, so that must have been a totally different look at the world at that point. Or maybe somewhat.
It was, right, somewhat. Yeah, I did run into that. And then even when I was in Camp Pickett, you had to go to Richmond, Virginia to catch a bus to go to Washington, D.C. to catch the train to come here. And I did run up on that on the Greyhound, and I got on there, and they had a sign, and it was saying colored to the rear,
And that's not an experience you had in Chicago.
No. And then coming...
And I would think that would be difficult, though. I mean, if you're used to not dealing with racism your whole life, and then you go someplace, and that's got to be very, very hard because you're
well, maybe to some people, but to other people, what you have to do is you have to adjust to the situation.
especially being in the military.
Right. Because you don't know where you're going.
What to expect out.
Most of the time, like they would send soldiers that was up north, they would send them south. So they would run into situations that they didn't have up here.
Like,
But those that couldn't adjust, well, they had problems.
made it harder. What did you learn? What are some life lessons that you learned from being in the military? Was being in the military to teach you any lessons that were good for you to learn throughout your whole life?
To adjust to the situation. Because once I ran into this incident in Virginia in Camp Pickett, then I came back to the camp and I never went back to that town again.
Did you feel like you experienced any racism on the base at all? Was there?
In a way.
Because we were living in a different world back then too. And I would assume that in the military then, you have people from the south, from the north, on that military base.
Right, because I think after World War II was over, if it was, I think it was President, was it Eisenhower? No, the one that's from Missouri.
I should remember that.
Yeah. But anyway,
I was about to say Thomas Jefferson, but that was a long time ago.
They integrated the services.
So after World War II, they integrated.
This is after World War II. I think this was in 45 or something like that. And then I got drafted maybe say 8 years later. And we had a company that the guys in that company didn't speak English.
Because you had people from like Puerto Rico and.
Well, we had some in there like that.
Truman. President Truman. It was
Truman, right?
Thank goodness for Google.
Right.
Thank goodness
He
for
was
Google.
the one that integrated the military. I think for 1945, around 45.
So you're about 10 years.
And I go in 53, so that was about 8 years.
And yet,
you still had some of that.
Because people came from different areas.
Going on. Some people just can't let go.
Yeah. And it took years, decades, and you're still working on that.
Right.
Now, how did your military service impact your feeling about war in the military?
What I think I learned about that, it was wars usually is about the big business, the millionaires, and they trying to protect their interests in another country, and then then they have to start a war. You got steel mills, and you got places that make guns and bullets and planes, and you can't, if you don't have a war, you don't make no money.
So you feel like there's a lot of, for the purpose of war has been a lot for financial reasons as opposed to moral reasons, that there may be a combination of both, but there's a huge...
Well, I would say a combination of both.
And a huge influence of that. Well, right now we're looking at...
You're kind of on the brink of it.
Yeah, what do you...
You're talking about going over there in North Korea, you're going somewhere to start. They haven't been here yet. But one thing that should have opened their eyes is when they had the 9/11. Because those people came and they wanted to learn how to fly the plane. What was it? 747 or whatever.
A big one.
Big one. But they never asked, they wanted to learn how to land. They just said fly.
Yeah, well, that's a problem.
The people over here said, well, okay, it'll cost you $10,000. So they said, okay. So they learned how to fly because they knew what was on their mind. And all those planes that ran into something was fully loaded with fuel. So it was just like it was a flying bomb.
We live in a much more dangerous society today, unless there's not a battlefront always.
Huh?
There's not a battlefront always anymore, is there?
No.
They talk about sending nuclear bombs or weapons. It was that long-range ballistic missiles from Korea to the United States. It's different from having a battlefront like we used to have.
Right.
It's a whole different world.
Everything would be like push buttons.
Is there any message that you would like to send out about, to people about your experiences or your thoughts or your views on anything?
Well, the people in charge should treat, I would say, the little man, okay, or minorities or whatever you want to call it. You should treat them equally.
Respect.
Because you never know when you may need them. Now, what if these people turn their back on you. What you gonna do?
And minorities are growing.
Then here you talking about building the French Mexico.
A border or a wall.
Right.
So it sounds like you're saying
You
we
want
need
to try to
respect all
keep them
human
out.
beings. We got to respect all human beings,
Mhm.
it sounds like. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about today that we haven't covered yet? We're going to go over and look at a couple of the pictures
But
we have.
okay, now in some countries, if you go over there and say you move there,
Right?
and you still a citizen of the country that you was born in,
Hmm.
okay, and they have a kid, I don't see how that kid automatically makes he's a citizen over there. But that's what they do here.
Yeah.
And then you want to send the parent home who is not a citizen,
Split 'em
and
up.
the children that was born here, you say they citizens, so they got to take them back.
At decades. Kids have lived here for decades.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And
So that's
that's a tough one, isn't it?
It is. The other countries, the only way you can stop that is you say, okay, you have a baby over here, but and you from another country, so that kid still belongs to you, and he is a citizen of wherever you were born at.
Yeah,
You know, because he was born here, it wouldn't make him a citizen. That way, that's one way you get rid of all of that.
So protect our borders more.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, because we are seeing some pretty devastating things happen.
And those people they don't mind dying
Because
they
don't have
dying.
much to go
They
back
say
to.
they dying for a cause.
We don't have much to go back to, it seems like.
Right.
Is there anything else we haven't covered? We're going to go look at your pictures here.
But the military now it's much better. It's much better than.
But we have air conditioning now. And somebody cooks
Well,
us
you
meals
know,
and-
when I was in Maryland, they had some barracks that were brick.
Yeah, those
They were
are
brick.
yeah, those are the newer ones.
Mhm.
And you don't have KP duty anymore.
No.
Yeah,
we had it.
We had basic training. We had hamburgers and Diet Cola and soda. And I guess you didn't have that back then, did you?
No. I can remember we ate, baby. We had some parts of our meal was potatoes 3 times a day.
Oh, that you got to peel when you weren't eating them, right?
Yeah, that, and then they had those aluminum trays. And if you didn't wash them right, and you had like maybe some eggs or something on there, and it's grease.
Ugh.
And then they had the rack where they would put them at, and then the cook would come along and wipe his
Correct.
hand on there, and they find some grease. Then you'd have to take them all out and go wash them
Oh,
again.
dear Lord.
Yeah.
Well, how about we go over and take a look at your pictures? So this is a picture of you in basic training, and you were 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Very handsome.
And you know something? That was what, 60 years ago.
So this is a picture of you. You said you were on maneuvers
Maneuvers out there in some woods out there somewhere.
up in Maryland, right?
I don't know if it was Maryland or if it was in Kentucky.
Oh, that's right. You could have been during basic training.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I'd like to tell you, Mr. Wells, is on behalf of Unity Hospice, we'd like to thank you so much for your service.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.